Welcome to Not Your Daily Stories. I'm Rosa Pandey.
And I'm Sam Meekings, and we're your co-hosts.
Each episode, we talk to media professionals about their work, discuss wide-ranging topics with our community, or take a deep dive into narratives shaping student life here at Northwestern Qatar and beyond.
This episode, we're focusing on student workload and mental health. Adapting to this new normal in the middle of a global pandemic hasn't been easy. The future feels uncertain. We're all absolutely exhausted from hours and hours of screen time every day. Many of us are suffering from stress, fatigue, burnout. This situation has been difficult for everyone, but especially for college students.
In October, a university-wide student mental health and workload survey was conducted at NUQ. It was proposed by Dr. Jocelyn Mitchell, assistant professor in residence in the liberal arts program at NUQ and an affiliated faculty member of Northwestern University's Middle East and North African Studies program in the Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences to better understand student concerns after a faculty pedagogy discussion in late September where anecdotal concerns about student mental health and workload were brought up. With the support of Professor Scott Curtis, chair of the Teaching and Pedagogy Committee at NUQ, and Senior Associate Dean Kathleen Hewitt-Smith, along with the support of student leaders and faculty who encouraged students to fill it out, the survey received responses from 84% of NUQ's student population, providing generalizable and representative data about student workload and mental health. Here's our conversation with Dr. Mitchell. Professor Mitchell, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. What I wanted to start with is the recent university-wide student mental health and workload survey that you conducted along with Professor Scott Curtis. One of the things that really struck me was the response rate to that survey. 84% of our student body responded to that survey. I just want to know, was that surprising?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Rosa, as well as Professor Meekings, for having me on this podcast. I love your work. I love political communication of important topics. So thank you for having me. No, I don't think that the 84% response rate was surprising to me because Professor Curtis, as the chair of the Teaching and Pedagogy Committee, worked really hard on getting that response rate. There were a lot of different people making sure that the message got out there that we wanted to hear student voice. But then I will also say it wasn't surprising to me because the students wanted to make their voices heard. And I mean, a mark of a strong community can often be the number of people who get involved, right, in terms of community service or political participation. You see this in democracies around the world where a higher voter turnout is seen as really good, right? So an 84% response rate can tell us two things. First, it can tell us that we have an active and engaged student body that still believes enough in the system, that isn't overly cynical and apathetic, right? That wants to make their voices heard and we're willing to make that effort. But it also tells us that this was an important topic. It was a topic that the students really wanted to make their voices heard on. Maybe we would not have gotten an 84% response rate for a different kind of topic that did not speak to them. But when we wanted to know their thoughts on their mental health and their workload, I'm not surprised that so many wanted to raise their voices. I appreciate it very much, however, because it does show faith in the system and it shows that they were willing to put their time and effort into telling us what was going on. And I did want to give a shout out to the faculty beyond just the Teaching and Pedagogy Committee, because the faculty really do care. We honestly care about our students and we want to hear our students' opinions and we want to make things better for them. And I know that because over the summer, we all were in classes just trying to figure out how we could do better on online teaching and the remote learning experience. So our summer break, these were optional trainings and classes that Northwestern as a whole and that Northwestern and Qatar specifically offered us, but they were all optional. And, a good 25 out of 35 of the faculty would regularly attend every single one of these sessions. So it just shows that the faculty really cared. actually, because of a suggestion by Professor Meekins in one of these sessions, we have continued to meet, again, optionally, but throughout the semester, this fall semester, just to share experiences with each other and discuss. And this is partly where the idea for this survey came out from one of these sessions, because faculty were bringing anecdotal evidence about student stress and individual student struggles. And I just was listening to all of this and thinking we would all really benefit from a generalizable kind of understanding of what all the students are thinking about, so that we know whether these are isolated incidents or a real pattern that we're seeing here. But this started from the concerns of the faculty.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an overlap between faculty and students in that all of us, especially in these times, want to kind of remind ourselves that we're not alone, that other people are going through these same things, whether it's, other faculty going through these same struggles teaching courses remotely, or whether it's students, of course, who are taking these courses remotely. And that in terms of the survey, that people's opinions do matter, and that people are not alone, and we want to know what people are thinking, and we want to share that and communicate that. And if we are going to improve things or try and improve things, then the only way to do that is through communicating. So, I mean, that leads us to the survey itself, really. And I was going to ask, what for you were the things that really jumped out from the results of the survey itself?
Well, thank you. And I just want to reiterate that the main takeaway for me, and should be for everyone, was that idea of nobody's alone in this, that we are in this together, that students are together in this, and that if you feel as a student that you are miserable and all by yourself and suffering, and that nobody understands you, and that you must be the worst student in the world to be suffering in this, that's not true at all. Everybody is feeling this way, even the best students, even the students who rated themselves as quite high on the emotional well-being scale, still rated their stress levels as through the roof. Still were putting in the open-ended qualitative answers at the end, concerns about isolation, missing classes, wanting to come back to some form of hybrid, feeling overwhelmed and overworked. Even the students who were feeling as though they were quite high. So the biggest thing is just that when we have generalizable evidence like this, it tells us very clearly we are not alone. We are all feeling this way, and that you will find support if you reach out, whether that is from your fellow students, from various student affairs or health and wellness, or academic affairs, or your faculty. It's nothing to be ashamed of if you say that you're struggling, because everybody is struggling, and we're all here to help each other. So that's absolutely the most important thing. In terms of the general results, I think that it's important to see with each one. I looked at the answers as a whole, but then I also looked at it by the classes, because I think what's important here is to assess both our student body as a whole, but then also, are there specific issues for specific classes? Because, for example, if our first year students were greatly suffering, much more than anyone else, then we would know, reach out to them, right? The first years need a huge amount of help. Conversely, if we see that they're doing pretty well, then we know that all the extra efforts done on their behalf to welcome them into the community have not gone in vain. And so what we see, for example, if we look at the well-being scores, here is a kind of U-shaped graph, and so an inverted U-shaped graph, right? So it's a bell-shaped curve. This is what we would call a normal distribution as a graph, which means that in general, people are clustered around the middle, and there's only a few people, kind of reporting on the extremes of both sides. We only have 6% of our student body as a whole reporting the lowest emotional well-being score of 1, which I actually think is fairly positive. But if we look at that across the classes, then we see that percentage saying 1 goes up with every single class. Actually, our first years are doing the best, right? We have only 2% saying 1. Sophomores have 6%. But by the time we get to juniors, we're at 8%. And then seniors, 13% of our seniors are saying a 1 for their emotional and mental well-being. And I think that's really concerning, for me. That makes me very nervous. And that immediately made me think we need to focus on what's going on with our seniors in particular, because we see that pattern throughout. They're also the ones that report the highest level of stress. And it's the same kinds of interesting findings with the stress levels. Now here, what's interesting about them is that the numbers don't change a lot from class to class, that in general, the responses are skewed across all the classes to higher levels of stress. We have 18% of our entire student body reporting the highest score of 10. I mean, that's almost 1 in 5 students reporting the highest score of 10. But in particular, 2 classes need attention. The 21% of sophomores reporting a 10 stress level, but 33% of seniors. So 1 out of every 3 seniors is reporting a 10 on the stress level. And I do think that again is a cause for concern. We should be thinking about that.
Yeah, for sure. And just from talking to a lot of my friends and peers, I've learned a lot about the challenges that students are facing, what we're feeling, and the kinds of situations that emotionally that people are going through. And I also think that this is a really unique and difficult experience for professors as well. And I would just like to ask you, what are some of the challenges that you've been facing?
You know, again, when we look at our quantitative results about how people feel about the satisfaction with remote learning, I know, and I'm sure Professor Meekins feels the same way, as faculty, we have been working so hard. I don't think we've stopped working. I don't know any faculty who is saying that they're working less. Most people are on their computers from dawn until dusk, or maybe past, trying to do their best for their students and this remote learning experience. And then we have this mean of just 5. We're just middling. We're working really hard, but you know, the satisfaction is just in the middle, despite the challenges that I know all of us as faculty are facing, because this is not what we have received training on. This is not the way we've normally taught. None of us have long experience with this form of teaching. These results are still a call for us to work hard about what we can tweak in our own classes, what we can improve both this semester and next semester, because we're just average right now. And I think we all want to do better, especially for the amount of work that we're putting in. You know, I mean, having 11% of our total student body saying a 1 in terms of their satisfaction with remote learning. So we don't want all of our students to feel that way. I think for me, the challenge on remote learning, it was really funny in a kind of non-funny way. The first classes of the semester, I felt like I was a grad student again, teaching a class for the first time, like walking into a classroom for the first time, like having to have my notes of like, first I will take attendance, and then I will say this thing, and then I will introduce this idea, and then, you know, like, because it wasn't regularized for me. It wasn't like riding a bike. All of us have taught sometimes for a decade or more, right? And so we're used to, now we know how to teach in person, and then suddenly changing it to this online situation made me have to rethink everything. And I was really nervous about it. I understood that it would be different, and I had to really rethink it. Now, I think the challenge for faculty as a whole is that we cannot teach the way that we have normally been teaching. So for us, regarding all of the work that we already put in every semester for a class, right? Getting to know our students individually, giving good feedback on the assignments, bringing energy into the classroom, adding new readings, right? You know, adjusting the class as it goes. Now we also are adding to it the idea that the entire structure might need to be rethought, the assignments, even some of the materials. And there's only so many hours in the day. We also miss seeing our community. We miss interacting with our students in person, and we miss seeing our faculty, our colleagues, and our staff in person. That helps build up a teacher, right? Because that gives you the energy for why are you doing this and for the next day. And instead, we feel the same way. We're so drained. We're seeing everybody only through the screen, and all of our work is also only on the screen. So that said, I know that many faculty have made major changes to how they teach and seen really positive results in the classroom. Just speaking for myself, forcing myself to keep the Zoom synchronous sessions to only 60 minutes, recording them audio only to prevent any issues with privacy, but making sure to record them so that if a student can't make it or they're having an issue with the internet, it's not the end of the world. They can catch up on the materials elsewhere, but keeping it to 60 minutes and thinking about how to be very clear about each progression of information and activity by having an agenda that everybody can see on Google Docs. And being able to get to know each other is something so important, right? Because you don't come to the college classroom just to meet the professor and learn from the professor. You come to the college classroom because you want to learn from each other. And so finding ways of rebuilding that atmosphere of discussion and interaction and collegiality, friendship even with your fellow students is so important. And I've tried different things to work on that respect. And I think particularly with my first year class, I feel like it's been successful, which is really great.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touch on some really important points there. Firstly, that we've all been going, students, faculty, staff, over the summer. Everyone's drained, everyone's exhausted. But, we have been talking as faculty members together, and we've been thinking obviously individually, as you've outlined there, some strategies for how faculty can adapt and have been thinking about adapting as a result of this survey. Well, do you have any thoughts or ideas about things students can do to adapt, how we all might deal with that Zoom fatigue, how we might overcome the exhaustion, the stress and the workload of it?
I wish I knew. I would love to hear what students think are the best ways that have been working for them, best practices in the classroom, best ways of dealing with the stress outside of the classroom or in dealing with the workload. And overall, I would just encourage the students to communicate, right? Whether it's communicate with their fellow classmates, with their faculty, with their TAs. If you have a good tip as a student, everybody else wants to know. I often ask my TAs. I've been really blessed this year. I have amazing TAs who are all juniors. Rosa happens to be one of them, but these TAs have been so helpful because in our short weekly meetings as TAs, I always ask them, how are you doing? And I just listen to them. And that helps me know a lot about what's going on, because these are bright, talented, motivated students. And when they mention that a particular thing that works in this, is working in this class, I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to try to model that in my own class. Or if they're saying they're having a real stress, then I'm hearing that. And then I see how they interact with each other too, and they share tips. And we actually have done that within both of my classes as well, where we've had times when the students have shared tips with each other or led peer learning sessions with each other. And I think that's really important because it's, the solutions aren't always or often even going to come from us as faculty. They're going to come from us listening to the students, right? And the students brainstorming together about what are kind of better ways forward. Actually, and I'll just say that this idea for the survey really came out of one of my conversations with Nadej, who is another one of my TAs. After hearing from all of my TAs about all the stresses and hearing that the anecdotal evidence from our faculty, Nadej and I just started talking about how we really needed generalizable data. And we came up with this plan to float to the Teaching and Pedagogy Committee. So I think listening to the students and asking the students to brainstorm and kind of almost peer support each other is one of the best ways that we can find those best tips, and we can implement them in our own lives, classroom and beyond.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great point. And I would also like to really thank you for taking your time today to talk to us, for being here and for sharing your thoughts. And thank you so much for taking the initiative on that survey.
Well, thank you so much. I have a skill in survey research. It's something that I do as part of my research profile. And it felt really great to be able to put that toward the service of the community and find out some really important information about our students and about how we can better support all of you.
Thank you for listening. And do get in touch with us via Instagram or Twitter @YourTDQ to let us know what you thought of this episode. or even to let us know what you'd like to see in future episodes of Not Your Daily Stories.
This episode was produced by Rosa Pandey, co-hosted by Rosa Pandey and Sam Meekings, and edited by Syed Ali Ahsan.